Welcome to Echoes of the Unknown, the podcast where we explore some of the world's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. I'm Jack Montgomery, and today we're traveling to the quiet farming town of Circleville, Ohio, where anonymous letters began arriving in mailboxes during the late 1970s. They started with cruel gossip and harassment, but the accusations quickly grew darker, more personal, and far more threatening. Before long, marriages were collapsing, neighbors were turning against each other, and one local man would die under deeply suspicious circumstances. Circleville is a small town located about 25 miles south of Columbus, Ohio. In the 1970s, it was the kind of place where people knew one another's business, where family reputations mattered, and where secrets did not stay buried for long. The town itself was quiet and rural, surrounded by farmland and narrow country roads. It looked like the sort of community where nothing truly terrible could happen. But in 1976, residents began receiving strange anonymous letters through the mail. The letters were typed or written in block handwriting, and the envelopes carried no return address. Contemporary descriptions and surviving evidence photos describe them as having been postmarked from Columbus. Some of the letters accused local residents of infidelity. Others claimed to expose scandals and hidden behavior. The writer always seemed to know intimate personal details, information that only someone close to the recipients should have known. What made the letters so unsettling was not just the accusations themselves, but the tone. The author sounded angry, obsessive, and deeply familiar with the lives of the people being targeted. Among the earliest recipients were Mary Gillespie and her husband Ron. Mary worked as a school bus driver in Circleville. According to the letters, Mary was allegedly having an affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The writer threatened to expose the relationship publicly if it did not end. One of the letters reportedly warned that if Mary failed to stop seeing Massey, her daughter would suffer the consequences. From the outset, Mary denied the allegations. Ron initially believed the letters were the work of some malicious troublemaker trying to damage their marriage. But the letters kept coming. They were received not only by Mary, but also by Ron and other members of their family. Some letters arrived at neighbors' homes as well. Whoever was behind them appeared determined to humiliate Mary publicly. The situation escalated over time. According to later accounts, Ron eventually became convinced that the anonymous writer might actually know something real about Mary's relationship with Massey. The pressure inside the Gillespie household intensified. Friends later described the family as deeply distressed by the constant harassment. Then, in August of 1977, the mystery took a deadly turn. On the night of August 19, Ron received a phone call at home. The exact contents of the conversation remain unclear, but according to reports, the caller upset him badly. He allegedly grabbed a gun, left the house in his pickup truck, and told his family he was going to confront someone. A short time later, Ron's truck crashed into a tree along a rural road. He died at the scene. At first glance, the death appeared to be a tragic drunk driving accident. Authorities found that Ron had been drinking heavily. However, several strange details immediately raised questions. Ron's gun was discovered at the crash site, and some investigators reportedly believed he may have fired a shot before the collision. Others questioned why he was driving in such an agitated state in the first place. The timing of the anonymous phone call and Ron's apparent determination to confront someone fueled speculation that his death was not accidental. Rumors spread quickly throughout Circleville. Some believed the anonymous letter writer had lured Ron into a trap. Others suspected Ron may have known the identity of the writer and died before he could expose them. No definitive evidence ever proved foul play, and Ron's death was officially ruled an accident. But for many people in Circleville, the mystery only deepened. If the anonymous letter writer had been responsible for Ron's death, the terror campaign might have ended there. Instead, it intensified. The letters continued arriving throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s. They targeted more residents, spread more accusations, and became increasingly threatening. In addition to letters, large threatening signs began appearing along roadsides around Circleville and along Mary's school bus route. Many focused on her alleged affair with Massey, while others targeted her 12-year-old daughter in vulgar and deeply disturbing ways. The signs reportedly included vulgar accusations and sexually explicit references involving the young girl, which many investigators and writers on the case have described as especially cruel and obsessive. The signs were strategically placed where passing drivers could not miss them. The signs and letters eventually expanded far beyond just Mary and her family. Multiple accounts of the Circleville case describe anonymous signs and letters targeting local school officials, law enforcement, public employees, judges, prosecutors, and ordinary residents around the town. Massey was one of the most heavily targeted figures because of the alleged affair accusations, but the harassment gradually spread into a much broader campaign of intimidation and humiliation. Some signs accused people of corruption or sexual misconduct. Others appeared designed simply to embarrass or frighten residents publicly. Contemporary descriptions say the signs were often placed along roadsides, near schools, and in locations where large numbers of people would see them during commutes. Several reports also mention that local officials became alarmed because the writer seemed to possess unusually personal information about many people in the community. Indeed, one reason the case became so infamous is that the anonymous campaign evolved from what initially appeared to be a private domestic accusation into something closer to a community-wide psychological siege. Residents reportedly became afraid that almost anyone could become the next target of a letter or roadside sign. One of the most important incidents occurred in February 1983. Mary was driving her school bus route when she noticed yet another threatening sign that mentioned her daughter directly. Furious and exhausted after years of harassment, she stopped the bus and walked toward the sign to remove it. What she found behind the sign shocked her. Attached to a nearby tree was a box connected to a string mechanism. Inside was a handgun. The weapon had been rigged as a booby trap. Authorities later determined that if someone had attempted to remove the sign carelessly, the gun could potentially have fired. Investigators eventually traced the handgun to a local man named Paul Freshour, who happened to be Mary's former brother-in-law by marriage. Freshour was an interesting figure. He was intelligent, mechanically skilled, and had previously worked in a supervisory role at a manufacturing plant. More importantly, he had a complicated relationship with the Gillespie family. Freshour's ex-wife, Karen, was Ron Gillespie's sister, meaning he was closely connected to the people at the center of the harassment campaign. Investigators quickly focused on Freshour as their primary suspect. Authorities believed the evidence against him was compelling. The gun used in the booby trap belonged to him. Some claimed the handwriting on the letters resembled his. Prosecutors argued that he had motive, namely a personal grudge coupled with anger over Mary's alleged affair with Massey, along with opportunity and familiarity with the victims. Freshour strongly denied everything. He insisted he was being framed and claimed the letters were not his work. Nevertheless, in 1984, he was convicted of attempted murder for the booby trap sign incident and sentenced to 7 to 25 years in prison. For many communities, that would have been the end of the story. The suspected culprit had been identified, convicted, and removed from society. However, Circleville's nightmare did not end. That's because even after Freshour went to prison, the letters reportedly continued. Residents claimed new letters arrived bearing the same strange style and threatening tone as before. Some were mailed to Freshour himself while he was incarcerated. According to reports, one letter mocked him directly, saying authorities had been fooled into believing he was the writer. That development shattered confidence in the official explanation. After all, if Freshour was sitting in prison, who was sending the new letters? Some investigators suggested Freshour may have arranged for someone else to continue the harassment on his behalf. Others believe copycats emerged after the case gained local notoriety, but many residents concluded that authorities had in reality convicted the wrong man. Freshour ultimately served about 10 years before being released on parole in the mid-1980s. Both during and after his incarceration, he continued to insist that he was innocent until his death on June 28, 2012, at the age of 70. As the years passed, theories multiplied. Many people believe Freshour truly was responsible for the letters, and the continued mailings after his imprisonment were either isolated copycats or exaggerated rumors fueled by the town's paranoia. This theory remains the official position that many investigators accepted. Supporters of this explanation point to several pieces of evidence. The booby trap gun undeniably belonged to Freshour. Some handwriting analysts reportedly concluded the writing on the letters resembled his. He also possessed the kind of technical knowledge required to construct the roadside trap. But critics argue the evidence was never as airtight as authorities claimed. Handwriting analysis has long been controversial and far from foolproof. Freshour consistently maintained he had no involvement, and some people who knew him believed he lacked the obsessive personality reflected in the letters. Others questioned whether investigators focused too narrowly on him because the gun provided such an obvious connection. Another theory suggests that multiple people may have been involved. The Circleville letters targeted numerous residents over many years, and the author appeared to possess an astonishing amount of private information. Some researchers have speculated that the campaign may have started with one person and later evolved into something larger, with different individuals contributing letters or spreading rumors. In a small town filled with gossip, grudges, and personal conflicts, paranoia could spread quickly. There is also the uncomfortable possibility that the writer was someone deeply embedded in the community, perhaps even someone considered respectable and trustworthy. That idea terrified Circleville residents more than any single suspect because it meant the author might have been hiding in plain sight the entire time. The case became nationally famous after being featured in newspapers, television programs, and true crime discussions for decades. Yet despite the attention, many facts remain uncertain. Exactly how many letters were sent is still debated. The lower estimates suggest hundreds, while others place the number at more than 1,000. Many of the original letters disappeared over time, and some details have become distorted through retelling. Even the truth about Mary's alleged affair remains somewhat complicated. Over the years, accounts varied regarding the nature and timeline of her relationship with Massey. That ambiguity added another layer to the mystery because it suggested that the anonymous writer may have possessed at least some genuine insider knowledge. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Circleville case is how ordinary it all began. There were no masked intruders or dramatic kidnappings, just envelopes arriving in mailboxes, a few sentences typed on paper. Rumors whispered in kitchens and parking lots, yet those letters slowly poisoned relationships throughout an entire community. People became suspicious of their neighbors, relatives, co-workers, and friends. After all, anyone could have been the writer. That atmosphere of distrust may be why the story still resonates decades later. Most unsolved mysteries involve a single violent moment, a disappearance, a murder, a robbery gone wrong. The Circleville letter writer case feels different because it unfolded gradually, almost invisibly, over years. Fear accumulated one letter at a time, and perhaps the most disturbing possibility of all is that the writer achieved exactly what they wanted. Even now, decades later, people still debate who was responsible. Some remain convinced Fresh Hour acted alone. Others believe the real author was never identified. A few suspect several people were involved from the beginning, but no explanation fully accounts for every detail. Who made the phone call that sent Ron Gillespie speeding into the night before his fatal crash? Who planted the booby-trapped gun along Mary Gillespie's bus route? And if Paul Freshour truly was innocent, who continued sending letters while he sat behind bars? The answers may have vanished with time, but somewhere in Circleville, Ohio, there may still be people who know exactly what happened and why. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Echoes of the Unknown. If you found this story compelling, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with fellow mystery lovers. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are the ones hiding in plain sight, written one letter at a time.